What's going on, everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo. And one of the biggest problems facing, I want to say, a lot of people are domestic abuse problems that go unreported, right? They do. And when we look at statistics, especially involving men, it goes underreported more often than not. A lot of people like to argue that domestic violence against men doesn't happen, that you can't be sexist against men, you can't be bigoted, discriminatory, or prejudiced against men, that it doesn't happen because of the power structure. We see this in modern feminism, we see this in modern like tenets of social justice, and it's not true. Men are half the population and they can be put in compromising situations or find themselves in those situations just as easily as their female counterpart. And unfortunately, it still goes completely just ignored in many cases. What we're learning now is that a growing number of men are reporting domestic violence to police, and that's a good thing, right? That's a very, very, very good thing that they're doing that. It's not that domestic violence against anyone is good. In fact, it's terrible. It should never happen, right? Beat your meat. Don't beat your partner. Just saying. If you're going to take it out on anything, bruise your genitals. People will remind you to calm the hell down. But ultimately, really, these things happen, okay? And they happen probably more frequently than we want to acknowledge. And when we see the statistics and when we see the conversation, at least the societal conversation, always favoring one gender over another, especially when they're trying to preach equality, it becomes very odd when you ask the question, well, what about this? Now, it's not just entirely whataboutism. There's actually a valid reason to have those discussions. It's not just a deflective tactic. And that's where we find ourselves when it comes to, well, men experiencing domestic abuse. How many men do you know have talked about being hit by their partners and have just never said anything because of fear and embarrassment? You hear that after women get assaulted. They say they don't want to say anything because of fear and embarrassment. And this is kind of the same thing. And I'm not discounting one or the other. I'm really pointing out that when it comes to personal trauma, that type of shame, it impacts and affects everybody. So it's best to put forward the idea that coming forward and saying something is going to be the best course of action. Now, it says here, record numbers of men are reporting domestic abuse by their partners to police as the proportion of women's victims are turning to police have fallen, official figures have revealed. Now, isn't that interesting that more men are now reporting being abused and women have actually kind of slowed it down? That the numbers are kind of starting to shift. Now, as we see that, will the conversation begin to shift as well? Probably not, because those in power generally tend to not want to give it up. I know that might sound mean-spirited and cynical, but when it comes to this type of discussion, when one side gets the lion's share, the vast majority of the conversation, the funding, the TV specials, the everything, the advocacy, all this stuff, they're not going to want to give it up. They're going to downplay it. They're going to downplay it. They're going to downplay it. They're going to downplay it because it serves their better interest to do so. But this is where the actual hard numbers come into play. And those hard numbers, that data, the courage to step up and say something will actually end up being better for everyone, because then it shifts the demographics, it shifts the statistics to show a more natural and a more truthful view of the situation, therefore allowing people to get a full, at least a better grasp on the conversation. Now, it says here that the proportion of male victims who told police about their domestic abuse increased from 10.4% in 2014 to 2015 to 14.7%, as Charity said more men were shaking off the stigma about talking about their suffering. And again, this is from the Telegraph. This is not like a men's rights blog. You know what I mean? Paul Elam isn't just viciously masturbating as he writes this article. That's not happening. This is legitimately truth, though. There is a stigma attached to this. My best friend was abused by his ex-girlfriend long before they broke up. And it wasn't until after they broke up that he finally told me what happened, that he told me how things were. And I knew how she was and I knew her temper. I never knew it got to be that bad. You know what I mean? So it's like, I didn't know until he finally told me. And it wasn't until he finally was able to get the courage to break up with her. Another friend of mine was in a very kind of emotionally abusive relationship, and she twisted him enough to where they've been married for, I don't know, 18 years now and have a couple kids. And I guarantee you he's not miserable because she's alienated him from everyone that he knows. And I haven't talked to him in years, right? Like, she kept telling him rap music was bad. Rap music was bad. He loved rap music. He was a white kid from suburbs in Portland, loved rap music. And he tells me, I can't listen to rap music anymore because it's not good for me. gaslighting, domestic abuse, emotional, mental abuse. These things happen. It's good to see people coming out and saying something about it. Now, it says, however, the figures from the Office of National Statistics have showed that it coincided with a sharp drop in the proportion of women victims reporting abuse to police, down from 25.8% to 18.4% over the same period. Campaigners suggested one reason could be increasing delays in overstretched police forces being able to send officers to promptly to domestic abuse incidents, giving the perpetuators more time to bully their victims into making a complaint. Just over 1 in 25 men said that they've suffered domestic abuse, which includes violence, a similar level of the previous year. The proportion of women who've experienced violence rose from 7.95 to 7.9. Now, again, I just want to make it abundantly clear, I do not believe that one side is worse off or better off than the other. Okay, this is not what it's about, right? If it comes across like I'm trying to shame women, I'm not. What I'm trying to say here is that there's a problem that both sides face, and that we need to, as a society, come together and very much discuss this from that perspective. Right now, it does say here that, however, the number of recorded domestic abuse offenses of both sexes saw a big rise to almost 600,000, an increase of 23% in a year. Although the ONS believed improved recording methods could have played a part. So, and again, this is always going to happen, right? So as we get to a point of where more people are reporting, methods are being improved of recording that information, the stigma ends up going away. We start getting a more accurate, perhaps, view of the situation. We start getting a better view. The fog of war gets lifted, so to speak. We can see the damage as it takes place, or at least the aftermath. And then from there, we can see that there are problems. We can see that there are issues, right? While the number of reporting in women went down, the number of reporting of men went up. And then, as it also showed us, that there was a sharp increase of 23%. So it's not like one side is worse off than the other. They're kind of in this fight together. They're kind of in this fight together, and that abusive situations happen and they're being reported more often. And that's showing that this is a very prevalent problem. And it's one that does need to be addressed. I'm not too sure how to address it. Personally, I believe that doing away with the stigma of mental health is probably the best course of action for trying to solve this problem. It's also a generational thing. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen with kids. Kids need to be taught how to better process and handle their feelings and their emotions. I don't think they get taught that very often, and that carries with them, and they do outbursts. And that's where a lot of this comes from. Again, this is just my own personal theory on it. I don't have any basis for that. I don't have any stats or data to back that up. It's just how I feel about it. And looking at the idea here, the whole thing, I'm glad more men are coming forward. I am. I'm not trying to put down women, but I am glad more men are coming forward, because I've known women and men who've both been abused. And it does feel like the men are always afraid to say something because it appears to be emasculating, right? If men show emotion, it's appeared to be, now what do they say? Everyone is soy filled, right? Like that kind of mantra, that kind of rhetoric is used in a way to emasculate men and emotions and feelings. And I might use it as a joke. I'm going to try not to be honest with you, because I do feel that in some cases it's been overused, and it's not used in a way that has any kind of actual rhetoric behind it. It's just bullshit. People getting abused and showing emotions, not, reporting the abuse or showing emotions, not a bad thing. Not a bad thing at all. I mean, hell, I cried when I got my silver play button. I still catch crap over that thing, right? It happens. But ultimately, I just want to say this. If you are in a situation where you feel like you are being abused and you are afraid to say something, don't be. Right? Go and find a counselor, a friend, report it. Get away from it. Get the help you need, because that's how we fix our society. When we show people that getting help is fine, that getting help is okay, and that you don't have to be stuck in that environment, that you don't have to be a prisoner in that regard because of some stigma. People are going to think whatever the hell they want to think anyway, and fuck them, honestly. But you still need to think for you. And that's the only person at the end of the day that you really, really have to make sure is okay. And so do that. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of talk about this one. It's a very touchy subject, I admit, and but I'm glad it's being talked about. The more we destroy stigmas, the better off things are. Anyway, what do you guys think about this? Let me know down in the comments below. I'm curious to know your thoughts. If you haven't already, please thumbs up the video and subscribe. Check back often for more content from me. My name is, of course, Matt Jarbo. Have yourself a great day, and peace out.